Hello and welcome to Build and Thrive, a podcast that is dedicated to improving the health and the happiness of the UK construction industry. So I'm your host, Jennie Armstrong, and before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, GKR Scaffolding, who are sponsoring the first series. So today's guest, we have got Chris Rodgers. Now, I come across Chris on LinkedIn and I saw a post about what he is doing, and I thought, absolutely, we need to have Chris as a guest on the podcast. He clearly shares the same mission as us about trying to improve the health and the happiness of the industry. So, Chris, welcome to the pod.
Hi, Jenny. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. So, Chris, before we go into this mission and what you're doing, just tell people a little bit about yourself, the company you work for, and a bit about your experience in construction.
Yeah, so I worked in construction for around 7 years. Previous to that, I was in the military, and during my time in the industry so far in these 7 years, I've been all around the UK doing various things within the industry, and I've seen a lot of struggles. So throughout that, I just grew my passion around trying to support people and trying to make the workplace a better place to be.
Right, so tell everyone, what is it that you're doing at the moment, this incredible mission that you're on?
Yeah, so I am running 500 miles in 6 points of PPE, which is hard hat, glasses, gloves, safety boots with steel toe caps, as well as overalls and full overalls. And I keep forgetting to mention every time I do talk about it, but I've also got a 2-foot flag that I'm carrying around as well.
Well, I think 500 miles sounds a big challenge in itself, but then definitely with all of that PPE on, I can imagine it's a pretty unique experience. So kind of before we get into the detail of it, tell us a little bit about what inspired you and why you're doing this challenge and what you're trying to raise awareness of.
Yeah, so my passion grew, the longer I'm in industry, and the bigger my passion's grown for helping people. And I really do believe that this day and age, a workplace has the facilities to make your day better. So we always say in the industry, come to work and you go home in the same condition. Well, I generally believe that you can go home in a better place for various reasons. So what inspired me is I'm a bit of a leader within the business now when I currently lead health and wellbeing and stuff like that. And I wanted to research some statistics to prepare for winter, prepare for people around the Christmas period. As we know, it's a big period around sort of mental health and struggles. And I was working from home that day and I've got a 1-year-old daughter. I saw the statistic of 507 people in 2021 of people that took their own life in construction, and I sort of sat back in my chair. And I remember looking at my daughter and I remember thinking to myself, imagine suicide took me away from her away from me. And I just had this big sinking feeling within myself. And that sort of grew from there. I spoke to a few people and their reactions was, wow, or, probably less polite for a podcast. But yeah, there was a few juicy reactions from people. And from that, I thought, yeah, that's hard. And so I really wanted to challenge myself and to use that to challenge the industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even, we talk a lot about the statistics and we recognise that I think the stat now is nearly 4 times the national average in our industry. And no matter how many times you talk about it, it's still people that are open mouthed that we've got such a challenge. And we've known about it for a long time. And it's people like yourselves that are bringing awareness to it. That's such an important thing for us to do. The industry is recognising there's a problem, and yourselves are doing some stuff to talk about why it's important. But why do you think we're struggling to make any changes and to see those statistics to start to drop rather than increase?
I think it's 2 things: lack of education from all parts, and I think it's a lack of awareness. It's interesting you say that the industry recognises that it's got a problem, and that's true. And I'll compare it to years ago. The Formula One industry used to basically accept that 1 to 2 people would die a year, and as an industry, they honestly accepted it. It was like you knew that 2 people were going to lose their life every year in the industry from a fatal accident, and it wasn't until they came together as a collective and they made a step change. And now it's very rare that you ever see that happen. So this is a very similar scenario, where we need to come together as an industry and we need to collectively make a change. Now, whether that be a legislative change or a policy change or awareness change, but a change needs to happen and we have to do it together.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know we often talk we all share the same workforce. Someone could be working on one job one week and go and work for the next contractor the next week. So we've all got a shared reason to be looking after everybody in the industry. And let's talk a little bit more about the particular challenges. Sometimes I find that the recognition about the kind of responsibility that the industry has and the accountability they've got for some of the challenges. What do you think that some of those particular issues are that we have in construction that maybe other industries don't have?
Interestingly, this is a genuine opinion, based off my personal experience from being around the industry, and I put it down to 3 factors. The 3 headlines are distance, pressure, and pay. First one being distance. Obviously, people working away from home Monday to Friday, or even more longer than that. But also local distance. People in the construction industry tend to leave the house before any other workers. In the industry, they leave the house at 5, 6 in the morning, and then they don't get home until 6, 7 in the evening. There's not many jobs out there that you would have that much time away from home. Pressure, internal pressure from families, from social circles, all that kind of pressure that you can get internally, but also external pressure within the business itself, and that means delivery of projects, getting things done on time, as everything is so financially driven and commercially aggressive as the industry is. If you do something wrong, or if you're late, there's a fine or there's a charge straight away. So and that brings so much pressure on. As an industry, margin gains for construction projects is very minimal. If you've got to get a project for £1 million, normally the company's only making 5% of that. And that's, for such a large amount of money, that's big. And that moves on to pay. Pay I broke down into 3 areas. Of course, self-employed, which people are on day rates. If you don't work, you don't get paid, which forces people to go into work when they're unwell, both mentally and physically. You get paid for longer hours, you get paid for being further away from home, quick turnarounds of, I've got this job, I really need you to do this job next week, or can you do it? It's a trusted person or it's a trusted client, I'll help you out, and all of a sudden you're having to work twice the amount of time that you've allotted for it. And also I think there's a problem in the industry of companies not paying companies for work that's been completed. People have got 30-day payment terms, which is a general way of doing it, but you're seeing so many smaller companies going under because of the work that they've completed they haven't been paid for. Unfortunately, I think that is a contributory factor towards that, and it's a difficult industry.
Yeah, and I've seen it firsthand where there's challenges, contractual challenges at the top. You've got those conversations that happen, but actually the workers actually on the ground are the ones that suffer. If people haven't been paid, the money's not come to them, the workers end up, and they're the ones that live into their means and won't be able to eat properly or do what they need to do. And I find it fascinating that as an industry, we talk about this as a challenge, from a project delivery perspective, as well as a mental health perspective. There's so many benefits to try and get it right. And I think if we find a way to improve that, the knock-on effect is far greater than just people getting money in their pockets. It's going to have a huge benefit on productivity and individuals' well-being. From what I see, and obviously I spend a lot of time working with organisations talking about mental health, and I do see there's more of a recognition from organisations that they need to do more. I think they're still struggling to understand what are the things that are actually going to benefit here and where do we make a difference. So share your kind of experience of what you've seen from an organisational level that's happening to make a difference.
Yeah, so I think the challenges that I see is the bigger organisations have got some really good support in place where they'll have good programmes, some good available programs, some 24/7 support programs, which is really good. But a lot of the time they only affect directly employed staff, and as an industry there's not many companies out there that will completely build their own project from start to finish, which means at some point you're going to have subcontractors involved, and the smaller companies don't have that support and that level of training. The training I've seen out there, which is really good, we'll talk about the charity soon, but mates of mine do an incredible bit of work around start the conversation and manage the conversation, which basically start the conversation is very good for the ground workforce to be able to start a conversation with people around them and notice signs and symptoms, but also manage the conversation where you teach in leaders how to manage their teams and from a mental health perspective and what to look out for. And that is really good, and I've seen that work really well.
Yeah.
I just think the industry don't have that as for the smaller organisation. Unfortunately, are more at risk and are more in the way of it.
Yeah, and we will talk about Mates in Mind in a bit more detail. But I've delivered a lot of the start the conversation sessions in the past, and I don't think there's ever been one that I've delivered that you haven't seen the impact of it and the conversations that come out from it. And it literally does start the conversation where people then say, "Well, let's talk about the challenges we've got here or the challenges we've got here," and it opens up that dialogue. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but I do think that principal contractors have got a bigger part to play in, enabling everyone that's working on their projects to have access to this kind of education, this training, and it has a benefit for them. The start the conversation sessions, like 45 minutes, it's enough time that they can dedicate to help improving people. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Mates in Mind. So and they're obviously supported. That's the charity that you're doing the work for. So tell me a bit about your work with them.
Yeah, as mentioned previously, I've delivered a lot of their training when I worked for Balfour Beatty in my previous organisation, and there was a year where I was in charge of the delivery of it for the business, which meant I'd got around a lot of the business like Scotland and all around the UK, which was really good. And like you, I had some really good conversations and some real challenging conversations I recall as well. And so that's where I sort of first got my relationship with Mates in Mind and my respect for them as well. And which is why when I fast tracked a few years, when I thought about this event, Mates in Mind was the first charity that I thought of that would be able to benefit from this sort of thing, because I know how passionate they are into being ahead of it and trying to get out there and stop people getting into crisis. And so I really do respect them for the work that they do and how they go about the industry. So yeah, that's effectively what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll make sure we link some details to them here so people can access them. But yeah, and so let's talk a little bit more about the challenge itself. So are you a runner? Is that where this came from originally, or is this a completely new thing for running as well as in PPE?
I've got a background in physical activity based on my 10 years in the army, but I actually got medical discharge for the army because I've got a condition in my legs. I've got something called popliteal arterial entrapment. So my calf muscle on both my legs grew around my main artery in my legs. I had to have a third of my calf cut off with my legs, which led to me being medical discharged from the army. I was told I would never be able to run again, and that was in 2018. So the journey that I've been on since has always been sort of challenging myself. And yes, I've done physical activity in the past, but like anything, I have to. It's a challenge that I currently have, so it's a challenge that I've given myself to be able to improve myself from a physical aspect, but also from a mental aspect as well.
Yeah, that sense of achievement especially when you've told you can't do something, it must be amazing. And with the PPEs, what part is the most uncomfortable whilst you're running?
Weirdly enough, it's the gloves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when I run, I love to feel the wind on my hands, and it just makes me feel better.
Yeah.
There's just no room for air to get in. So it's almost like I'm running with a sauna. But the boots, of course, aren't. They're not running trainers, are they? But my sponsors are absolutely amazing, and to be honest, they've been so good. I've been at their head office a few times. They've wanting to support me marketing wise. I've tried on about 15 different types of boots, and their managing director's come down and he wants to, they're so personally involved in this challenge and this event. It's so good. The boots are definitely not running boots. No. So they have initially at the start given me some blisters all over my feet, which has been challenging because I'm running so often, I don't have time to recover, which means I get a blister, I start the next run with that blister. So yeah, that has become a bit of a challenge, but they're so comfortable, right? They are really comfortable. They're just not running trainers.
They're not for running. No, definitely. So, and how many miles are you doing at a time then when you're out running?
Yeah, so I'm going to achieve my goal 2 ways. Okay, so the target is 500k, but I split that down into 36 weeks. So every single week I need to do a half marathon distance. Okay, now some weeks I'll do a half marathon on its own, in a one-off. On other weeks I'll break it down into maybe 2 or 3 smaller runs. I'm doing that for a few reasons, because I want to be applicable to everyone, to outreach everyone, for everyone to. I want people to run with me. I want someone to go, Chris, that is great. Can I run with you? Absolutely. You can join me. And let's have a chat. So I've got 2 social media platforms. I've got a TikTok and Instagram, which is dedicated to the event, and some of the times I'll be out running and I'll be talking about statistics. I'll be talking about things that you can do to spot signs and symptoms. I'll be speaking about industry challenges just because I just want to use the platform to reach out to people. Because if you go to social media and you scroll down and you see someone running a PPE, it'll probably make you stop and go, "What's he doing?" And then by the time you've done that, maybe 2-3 minutes in, I've educated you. So hey, that's the goal, right?
Absolutely. Oh, it's absolutely incredible. I don't even, the thought of 500 miles, but let alone in the PPE, I don't know if I could ever even imagine it. And I suppose, have you had any kind of particular challenges? Has it just been the blisters or anything else that's been a challenge? I'm imagining this weather, it's been quite icy and cold recently. How are you finding it there?
It was New Year's Day, so obviously everyone out with a hangover. I was fresh as a daisy, good to go. And I ran in an amber weather warning, and the flag, which is 2 meters, 2 foot high, 2 meters high. Yeah, I ran 9 miles in a straight line, I think, but that hasn't accounted for the left and rights from the wind. So I'm not sure that was a great idea. But there has been various challenges. The PP gets heavier as the run goes on. So if I go for a 5K or like a park run, local park run, it seems to be okay because it lasts sort of half an hour. But like I went out on Saturday and it was an hour and a half, and I'd done 9 miles, and it was the last 2 miles were a bit of a struggle just because I hadn't actually eaten enough beforehand, so I need to do a bit more prep, to be fair. But it's got its own challenges, right?
I'm sure, and you've got plenty of opportunity to learn and get better. So yeah, it's absolutely amazing what you're doing. And I suppose just before we kind of finish up, is there any other kind of things that you want to say to listeners or people to the industry, things to take away around, what you're doing, what they can do to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to get involved, you can get involved anyway. Like, if you see me, give me a shout, give me a beat, because I can tell you I need that beep or shout at that point in time. And if you want to like, comment, share on any of my content, obviously I've got a Just Giving page. I've also got TikTok and Instagram, as mentioned before. If you literally just search 500 miles for 500 lives, you'll see my big grid on there. The driver, of course, is to raise money for Mates in Mind as well. But my driver is to raise awareness. And what I want people to take away, and what I want people to see me and think about when they see me, is to educate yourself. If you're a business, educate yourself on how you can manage mental health within the workplace. Prepare yourself and your business to support someone in crisis, and that can be as simple as knowing exactly where to go and where to signpost them to, and to spot a change in someone. But also education as an individual. If you're an individual and you're listening to this, or you're listening to any of my videos, educate yourself in preparing yourself to either, if you're in crisis yourself, or if a friend, family or stranger or colleague is in crisis, because you need that support and they need that support. I can guarantee you will be absolute thousands fold on that 500 where people have actually supported someone in the crisis and they've recovered from that. And to be honest, I've heard so many stories since I've started this journey 2 weeks ago. I've had someone reach out who taught me knee bosh, and his son committed suicide. Commit suicide, took his own life 4 years ago, and I'm going to be speaking to him very soon. I've had a few people message me personally who saw my calls and have messaged me to say that they were in the brink of suicide, and they've donated or they've given me some support. So look, we're two weeks into the challenge, and I already am starting to see a bit of a difference in the people around me, as well as the spread, which is really good. Sorry, that was a very long-winded way of answering that question, Jenny.
No. And do you know what? It's absolutely amazing what you're doing. And like I said, most people go into this stuff and you think, well, I can change one person's life. That's a benefit, but the impact that you're going to have is phenomenal. So I wish you all the best of the luck for completing the challenge. We'll make sure we've got all of your TikTok and your Instagram accounts all linked in so people can find you. We'll also put your Just Giving page in. Yeah, and just best of luck, and thank you so much for what you're doing. It's just an amazing opportunity to raise awareness of such an important cause.
No, amazing. And honestly, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, I appreciate you reaching out at the start, but I also really appreciate the time you've given me here, because it's really good to talk about it.
Well, let's think about getting you back on towards the end of the year, and you can tell us what you've learned and some of the kind of final stats of the numbers and things that you've done. So thank you so much. So before we go, I just want to say a big thank you again to our sponsors, GKR Scaffolding. To our listeners, if you like us, make sure you like and subscribe on LinkedIn, on YouTube. If you've got any feedback or you want to share anything about future guests that you'd like to see, please do get in touch. And yeah, let's keep working on creating a healthier and happier industry. Thanks, everyone.